going well with my life. Back on again, basically, it's not great to see. Oh well. They'll give me plenty to write about on Monday, I suppose. I don't really understand why UK results should be held back because of what's happening.
No.
I don't really think people in Belgium are going to be influenced by what happens in Leeds or Wakefield or Bradford. I can understand everyone in one country doing it.
Yeah, I didn't realise that.
I didn't realise it was really tested.
Well, that was what I heard at our election meeting.
Right, I think it's so what else is happening? Oh. Yes, that's much appreciated. I think she's it's one of these decrees from Newsvest. I think it's because some national figures have been released, PA running it, so they deal with what's happening locally.
I don't know if
Yes. I think most councils are getting everyone in somewhere, and she's doing pretty well at it. Been through the process once and I will do again next year. You took some time. It took confidence, willing to take. Probably do it next year. Just do me. I'm okay, thank you.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In this Holy Week, as we contemplate our Lord's work of transformation on the cross from sorrow to joy, death to life, our prayers are offered for the victims of the South Korean shipping disaster, for all who have died in that disaster, their relatives and friends, for those who have survived, that God may give them healing, strength and peace. Pray too for our politicians, for all responsible for government, both locally and nationally, and for those who work in opposition, especially as we edge towards elections. And we ask God's blessing upon our meeting here this afternoon, praying for wisdom and guidance, for attention to the fulfillment of his great commandment of love, for him and for one another. We remember before you, O God, those who bear authority among us, in church and state, in industry and commerce, all who speak to us through broadcasting and the press, and all who have power over the lives of others. Grant them humility to seek your guidance and the courage to do your will. This we ask in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, colleagues. Please be seated. Agenda item 2 on the Council summons is to receive disclosures by members of interest in matters under consideration. I shall take these in order, please, and will members declaring an interest please identify themselves and their particular interests clearly. Firstly, colleagues, are there any disclosable pecuniary interests to be declared? And may I remind those members making a disclosable pecuniary interest that you must vacate the council chambers at the appropriate time prior to the discussion and voting on the matter under consideration.
Agenda page 17, the Gordon Place development. I work for the Shevlin Housing Group.
Yes, thank you. Any more declarations? Thank you very much. Are there any interests other than pecuniary? Yes.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 12.3, parking permits. I do have private council permit parking where I live, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. The same agenda item, Madam Mayor, my street in which I live is private parking only.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3 is to receive and confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 12th of March. Are these minutes moved? Thank you. Are these minutes seconded? Thank you very much. All in favour of the minutes? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is to receive apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received in advance of the meeting from Councillor Mrs Lochran and Councillor Stone. Are there any further apologies? Would you please identify the members concerned clearly, one after the other? Yes, Sandra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have the long-standing engagement at 3 o'clock, so I'll be leaving the chamber.
Yes, thank you.
Same reason, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any more? Right. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is to deal with such announcements as I may decide to lay before Council. I was delighted to accept an invitation from the Bishop of Wakefield, the Right Reverend Stephen Platten, to attend the final Thanksgiving service for the Wakefield Diocese last Sunday. From the 20th of April, the diocese will merge with those of Bradford and also Ripon and Leeds, before it becomes part of the new West Yorkshire and the Dales Diocese. My civic parade through Horbury on Saturday, the 12th of April, was a great success. Can I thank all those who were able to attend and support it? With regard to my charity events, there will be a clay pigeon shoot on the 10th of May. Everyone who is participating in the abseil down the Cathedral Tower have now received their sponsorship forms, and I'm sure they would welcome your support and sponsorship. As many of you will know, Anthony Sadler, Service Director of Communities, is raising funds for my charity by undertaking a number of sponsored runs. Last weekend, he ran the London Marathon, completing it in a very respectable 3 hours and 15 minutes. Anthony is also running the Wall Ultra Marathon on the 21st and 22nd of June, which is a 69-mile race over 2 days from Carlisle Castle to the Gateshead Millennium Bridge. All monies raised by Anthony are being donated to the Mayor's Charity Fund, and for anyone wishing to sponsor him, further details are available from the Civic Office. Members will be aware that a number of colleagues have decided not to seek re-election at the District Council elections to be held next month. On behalf of Council, may I thank Councillor Broom, Lyle, Stone and Travers, not only for giving up their valuable time to serve the people of our district, but also for your contribution that you have made over the years. I extend my very best wishes for the future to all of you and wish you good luck to those members seeking re-election. And finally, colleagues, I would like to welcome the Standards Committee Chairman, Dean Emeritus George Nairn Briggs, to our Council meeting. To enable him to address Council, I wish to formally propose the following motion without notice. That Council Procedure Rule 25.1 be suspended for Agenda Item 6 to enable the Chair of the Council Standard Committee to present his report to Council to the extent to which he feels is necessary. Is the motion seconded? Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. And that is carried. And that also concludes my announcements. I just want to say to Council that the next agenda item concerns the conduct of a member of this Council. I would want that to be the issue discussed, not any personal or exempt information. If anyone does so, I will step in and stop them speaking, as it is important not to disclose personal or exempt information. Agenda item 6 details the Standard Committee report, complaint WMDC 7 2013. Can I ask Dean George Nairn Briggs to present the report with the usual 5 minutes? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, it's been my privilege to be a member or chair of your Standards Committee since its inception. During that time, I've been very proud indeed that we have had very few complaints laid against elected members, and even fewer of them have been upheld. This has been because both collectively as a council and individually as members, you have had a real will to maintain and uphold the highest possible standards of conduct in public life. So it is with considerable sadness that I bring this report of the Chief Executive with recommendation from your Standards Committee and Monitoring Office before Council this afternoon. I would add that the voting in the Standards Committee that we should bring this motion forward was completely in favour, and all members of the committee were present at that meeting. Madam Mayor, elected members will have read the report before them, so I will not go into great detail. The nub of the complaint is that Councillor Tully acted in a bullying and intimidating way towards officers in a Child in Need meeting on the 17th of July 2013. In accordance with the proper procedures laid down by this Council, the Monitoring Officer forwarded the complaint to Councillor Tully in order to give him an opportunity to respond to it. He chose not to do so. The committee decided, on the strength of a report from Mr. Dennis Patterson, the independent person appointed by this Council, and the evidence it had before it, that Councillor Tully had breached your Code of Conduct. Madam Mayor, as a committee, we always try to find an informal resolution to a complaint if we can. For example, we will offer appropriate training, or we collaborate with the party discipline through the whips, and I meet with the whips from time to time. We offered Councillor Tully the opportunity to meet with the monitoring officer and the chief whip of his party to talk through the complaint and its implications. He refused to do so, and in fact was verbally abusive to two officers about this. Paragraph 4.8 of the report gives the words he has recorded as using on one of these occasions. On the previous occasion, he had used 30 abusive remarks. But this one, I am not playing your stupid game. I have no intention of explaining myself to anyone. Next, following the proper procedures, the Standards Committee instigated a full investigation of this complaint. In order to ensure complete objectivity, an external investigating officer was appointed. This was Mrs. Margaret Miller, who is Principal Legal Officer at Kirklees Council. In the course of her investigation, Mrs. Miller interviewed everyone concerned, with the exception of one officer who was on maternity leave. The one person who refused to take part in the process was Councillor Tully. Mrs. Miller's investigation reached the conclusion that by his behaviour at the Child in Need meeting, by his behaviour towards two of the Standard Committee's officers, and by his refusal to take part in the investigation of the complaints made against him, he had breached your code of conduct. We did consider offering training, but in view of the responses we'd had before, we thought that was probably not going to be accepted. And so that is the reason why you have this motion before you today of censure. Madam Mayor, I believe that both this Council and the political parties represented here will wish to send the strongest possible signal to the public out there that they expect, that you expect, the highest standards of behaviour and integrity from all elected members, and that you will not tolerate either bullying nor contemptuous disregard for this local authority's standards regime. It is because I, as the independent chair of your Standards Committee, want to see that strong signal sent out to the public that I ask this Council to overwhelmingly pass a motion of censure on Councillor Stephen Tully. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now ask Councillor Tully to respond to the report and to account for himself to Council? Councillor Tully, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is my intention in the short time that I have to try to deal with facts and not excuses, and why I refused to take part in what the Reverend described as a stupid game. Let me just say this to you. I've never bullied anybody in my life. Never. And spend all my professional time defending people who were bullied. And the question is asked, why did I refuse to take part? And I'll tell you why, shall I? Because the only person in this room today that's a victim of bullying, abuse, intimidation is me. And that person in this room knows who he is. Said to me quite clearly, before this year is out, I'll bury you. I will bury you. So then he asked this question, why didn't I go? Give some dates to think about. 25th of July last year, we have a disciplinary hearing in the group office. 16th of August, the first standards investigation comes into me. I'm accused of supposedly asking for somebody's head on a plate that I've never met in my life. In that process, We implicate two other councillors who weren't even there. I did participate in that because I was quite annoyed that I'd been accused of something that I'd never even had a telephone conversation with. So that one went. Another date I want to remember is the 2nd of September last year, when the internal investigation into my constituents were made public. And lo and behold, on the 16th of September, there's another standards investigation brought out against me. I'm going to read you the letter, and I'm going to be as brief as I can, because I'm mindful of the time. And listen to the date. 25th of June. That's 3.5 weeks before I went to that meeting, the Child in Need meeting. I penciled in, I copied in. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Collins, Councillor Box, and Councillor Denise Jeffrey, and said, he's not in his place today, so I don't think he's not on with Jim Crow. Jim, I've had a rather long conversation with my constituent yesterday, and there seems to be a lot of allegations being thrown about. Last Friday, this family waited for 10 minutes for a visit from a social worker, and it was cancelled. The lady talked to me about some very serious allegations that had been made. The assessment plan. So I made this, Jim, has there been initial assessment done? Has there been a core assessment done? Is this case been case managed? At this stage of the proceedings, I have only heard their version of events. And I would welcome some dialogue. Please. I would welcome some dialogue. No dialogue. On the 12th of July, 3 days before that meeting took place, I wrote him again. No dialogue whatsoever. And yes, I did go along to that meeting because my constituents were being threatened and talked to by people with no dignity and no civility. And I looked at their particular case, and let's think about this. 25th of January, when this family were first investigated or brought to the attention of social services, this meeting took place in July. And people have got the audacity to accuse me of having a concern about children's safeguarding and welfare from a case that had been open from January, and in July, but was still dealing with it. And I asked 3 questions, the same questions that I'd asked Jim Crook 3 weeks earlier. Is there a core assessment been done? Is there an initial assessment been done? Is this case being case managed? That's all I asked. And I went into that room with my constituents. And I will tell you this now. The social workers were caught like rabbits in the headlights, lying to my constituents. And that was proven. Because an investigation took place by Mark Stonnell, the internal investigation into their complaints. And I've got don't intend to go from any time left. But found that on this occasion, they were telling barefaced lies. So then I'm invited then to come into a second meeting to answer to the Standards Committee. And I'll tell you why I didn't get involved in the Standards Committee. I'll be quite clear with you, shall I? A simple reason is this. They took evidence from 3 people or 4 people who were told lies. And that evidence has been accepted. My constituents volunteered their evidence, and this council and this authority failed my constituents on 3 occasions. It failed it at the first attempt by allowing this to continue, and it failed this.
10 seconds, Councillor.
Pardon?
10 seconds.
I'll just say this. We wouldn't be having this debate today if it wasn't for me. For whichever way you want to look at it. Because this council last week, in its wisdom and its eagerness to hang me out to dry, and I can defend myself, this council last week sent out this documentation which would have gone into the public domain with my constituents named printed all over it. A total breach of data protection. I have to honestly say, in this meeting, both the Chief Executive and the Legal and Governance Officer have written to me and apologised and said it should never have happened. I brought that to the attention of this council. I didn't need to do that. My wife has said to me quite clearly, what the hell did you do that for when the council's trying to...
Wind up, Councillor, please.
I have one regret, Madam Mayor, and I'll finish on this for not a word. I should have gone to that Standards Committee. I would have flattened that standards committee and knocked it clean off its feet and exposed them social workers. That's the regret I have. But the regret that I have is that I let my constituents down and I should have gone and protected them. And we're not protecting them because we've exposed our constituents now to the press and anybody else that wants to, and that's the regret that I have.
Thank you. Does any member have any comments to make, please? Yes, Councillor Hudson? Hodgson.
I rise to speak in support of Councillor Tully and ask that this Council give due consideration to deferring any action against Councillor Tully until such time as Councillor Tully has been extended the opportunity to meet with the Council when accompanied by his elected representative. The feedback coming from the South East District is that Councillor Tully is being treated unfairly and there is deep resentment for the way he is being branded a bully. This resentment is felt by the community at large, who hold Councillor Tully in high regard as a leading figure in the South East. Councillor Tully's reputation was forged when he led 2,000 striking miners during the 1984 miners' strike and suffered personal consequences for this for years afterwards, including the freezing of bank accounts and denial of credit from banks and financial institutions. My own personal association with Councillor Tully was initiated when my late father, Councillor Gordon Hodgson, joined Councillor Tully by way of membership to the Labour Party. My relationship was reinforced when my father-in-law stood by Councillor Tully as a member of Frickley Colliery Strike Committee for the full 12-month duration of the strike. The venom and
Keep to the subject, Councillor, please.
I'll go with your guidance. The venom and animosity that has been extended to Councillor Tully from within the Labour group has to be seen to be believed, and fellow councillors should be shamed by their actions when they have called for Councillor Tully to resign from the Labour Party. The time has come for reconciliation with Councillor Tully, because my fear is that unless this takes place, we will see a fracture and breakdown of the relationship with the people of the South East. In conclusion, I do not propose that we disregard the findings of the investigation, rather that we look to reconcile the situation and improving relations with the people of the South East, who have taken exception to the way in which this Council has elected to deal with Councillor Tully. Thank you.
Any further comments, please? Yes, Councillor Halliday.
It is a comment, Madam Mayor, but I think I'll speak on behalf of most people in this council chamber when I say that George Nairn-Briggs is one of the nicest people anybody and fairest people anybody could wish to meet. And if George Nairn-Briggs has offered an olive branch to anybody, then I suggest they should have taken it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from anyone? No. No. Right. Councillor Tully, you have the opportunity to wind up, please.
People are entitled to their opinion, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is this. I regret not going to the Standards Committee. I should have gone. I accept that. But you have to understand this. Why I didn't go. What was being forced upon me at that time. No excuses, it's facts. And I will say this. If social workers, whoever they are, was in the state of, as has been reported in the report after I'd asked them 3 questions, it's got to help them if ever they find themselves in a situation where somebody's, giving them some grief from a position of a barrister. And I would not wish that on anybody. And I'm just saying this. In all this, there is no public interest. Do what you want with me. I'm a public figure, I'm an elected member, and I'm fair game. But when we finish bashing it around, we have failed that family and, more importantly, them children. I have, as well as this authority, because we should not, there is not an ounce of public interest out there in this situation. It might be me, but not in that family. And that's regrettable. But if this council chooses to do what it does, that's fine by me. But I can't do anything about that. But I do make this point quite clearly. That we have to ask ourselves one question. Why are we here? Why do we come here? And keep picking up, well, yesterday paycheck day, wasn't it yesterday, wasn't it? 15th. And if we can't come here to represent and to deal and to make representation on people's behalf, or we're less able to stand up for themselves, we may as well call it a day and run it as a business. And that's all I've got to say. And we need to ask ourselves, why are we here? I have got the utmost respect for the chap who led the report. I don't know the man personally, and my actions are not in any way pointed at him as an individual. I would not do that. But I will continue to have utter contempt for an organisation that treats my constituents with the same discourtesy and with the same venom as they would treating that meeting. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Right, we will now move to the vote. All in favour of the recommendations from the Standards Board? Thank you.
Any against? Thank you.
That is carried. Agenda item 7 is to receive deputations. No deputations have been received. Agenda item 8 is to receive the leader's report. After the leader has presented his report, he will answer any questions on issues contained within the report. Up to 30 minutes will be allowed for questions and answers. Councillor Box, will you present your report to Council? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief. Just got 3 quick items to raise. The first is to say that the combined authority for West Yorkshire and York has now become live. That was the week before last. I believe that regular reports will come to both Cabinet and to this Council on the work of the new combined authority, which I've been asked to chair. I know that Jeff Welsh, the position, that has been involved in 1 or 2 of the meetings already. And I think the strength of the new combined authority is that not only will it look at things right across West Yorkshire so we can get a comprehensive idea of what needs to be done, but it is also cross-party. And I think that is the real strength of the new combined authority. Not only is it cross-party, but we've got the chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership, Roger Marsh, as a member as well. So hopefully, Madam Mayor, it can start to make a real difference right across West Yorkshire, in particular in connection with the new transport fund that will and is being created. They say regular reports will be given to Council. The other thing I want to mention is that along with the Deputy Leader and Councillor Dagger, I met recently with Pontefract Civic Society, and I'd like to use this opportunity, Madam Mayor, to thank them for their hospitality in meeting us at Pontefract Town Hall, where we discussed a range of issues, but in particular we looked at the North of England rail strategy. I'm pleased to say that I've asked officer colleagues to make sure that the document we got, the submission we got from the Civic Society, that calls for Monkhill Station to be made a gateway station, is something that I think the Council can support, and we have made representations to that end. And finally, Madam Mayor, just to echo what you said about those colleagues who are leaving, Betty Lyles, John Stone, Darren Travis and Linda Broom, and also June Drysdale. I think you missed off the list. And certainly with regard to June, Betty and John, I'd like to wish them all the best, and I look forward very much to welcoming their Labour successors. I'm sorry, I can't resist. You would expect it of me, come on. I know, and I meant to be on my best behaviour today as well. Just to say thank all those 5 colleagues for the contribution they have made to the work of this council, and also for the work they carried out on behalf of their constituents, irrespective of party. I know that all 5 of them have done an excellent job, and we shall be able to thank them in greater detail at the ceremony where you get your certificate after the election in May. So a big thank you from me to all 5 of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Box. Are there any questions on Councillor Box's report? Councillor Walsh, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess at this stage it's traditional where I ask the question, will you recognise the things that I'm going to actually agree with or not? And if I may, I think that the combined authority itself, acknowledging the point, creates a possibility for work on a scale that can be good across the whole of the district, but actually across West Yorkshire. And I think that it remains to be seen how things move forward. But there's an awful lot of goodwill, there's an awful lot of hard work going into trying to make it work. And I think that's a very positive thing. Would you agree with me that Pontefract Civic Society are awfully nice people? And I think that the idea of acknowledging that Monkhill could be a gateway, should be a gateway, is a very, very positive thing. Right on the edge of the district, I think it's an appropriate thing to see. And this last one isn't so much of a question, because you've guessed the answer, which is I wish all those people that have actually put their efforts in over recent years as members of this council that will be no longer on the council in June. I wish them well, and I hope that things go well for them as they move forward and get on with their lives outside of the council. So that's a comment, and that's my colleagues and also members of the Labour group opposite that are going onwards and upwards, or going somewhere different, or doing something different. All the best.
Obviously, we agree on the combined authority, and thank you for those comments, and we also agree about the Pontefract Civic Society. With the best will in the world, I can't bring myself to wish your candidates all the best, including yourself, Jeff, in May. Well, I can't. I mean, I'm not going to throw away a lifetime of kind of opposition to what your party stands for, but I do sincerely want to thank your retiring colleagues for everything they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Box, and that concludes the Leader's report. Agenda item 9 is to receive written Cabinet member reports in accordance with Council Procedures Rule 13.1. I will take each report in order that they appear on the agenda. Under Council Procedure Rules, each Cabinet member is allocated 5 minutes to present their report. An additional 15 minutes is then allocated to enable each Cabinet member to answer any questions and brief comments on both issues contained within the report or on wider issues within their respective portfolios. 9A, and the first report is that of Councillor Mrs Jeffrey, agenda item pages 15 to 19. Councillor Mrs Jeffrey, could you please introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few things I want to raise. Last Friday we had a very successful business forum at Castleford. We had a successful one last autumn in Wakefield, and following on from that success we decided to have one in the Five Towns area. We had it in Castleford and it was well attended, and we were able to give lots of business advice to new businesses coming into the area. The other thing I'd like to raise is, under my report, is the cycle route project. I think the Tour de France has really got people interested in cycling, and more cycle routes are coming forward in this district, and we're having more events opening them and more people taking part in cycling. So it's good and healthy for the community, but it just shows the interest that the Tour de France is bringing to this area. A very disturbing thing, of course, is the Kellingley Colliery and the pit closures. I find it absolutely appalling that the last two pits in Yorkshire are about to close, and we did hope that the Tory government would come forward and help, and all they've done is what the Tories always do with pits in this area and any other area, come to think of it, is to offer some money to help forward the redundancy and close the pits, bring forward the pit closures as a measured way of doing it, which I think is dreadful. And there are other ways. And when you think about the fact that the energy policy across this country are in such a mess with the issues of Russia and all the other places where we're going to have problems getting coal, getting energy through to this country, and they can't do anything to help the pit closures. I think it's appalling. Our business colleagues in the economic development section have been working with Kelly to offer advice or anything we can do to help. But I'm sure people will agree with me here that it's a very sad day to this area, and I move very forward.
Thank you, Councillor Jaffe. Are there any comments? Yes, Councillor Tennant, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does the Deputy Leader agree with me that the loss of them 700 jobs at Kennelly will not only be devastating for the miners and their families, but an hammer blow to the local economy? We're talking 700 jobs, well-paid jobs, lads with great skills know how to get that coal. Once them skills and that coal's gone, it's gone forever. The government, as Denise has mentioned, has given 10 million for closure aid. They should be giving development aid. That colliery has just reached the Silkstone seam, which is, anybody knows, is the finest coal, or one of the finest coals to get in Europe. It wouldn't cost the taxpayer any money, because the government could actually put money they've been taking out of the miners' pension scheme over the years to act as guarantors. There's millions upon millions gone out of that scheme. They could use that, and also to develop a clean coal technology, which they use in Germany. I believe what it needs from government, it needs a cross-party committee setting up in Parliament to look at 50 years on where energy needs for this country, because we're only looking at the next 5 to 10 years, and that's not good enough. We've got to look at the energy needs for this country for the next 50 years. And Lubbock and Ayton wind farms, they're not going to keep the lights on. Believe me, they will not keep the lights on. The argument's the same as it was 30 years since: coal, not dole.
Councillor Walsh, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, Denise, before I get to the question for you, I'd like to agree with Clive about his comment about a panel to look at energy. He raised that at the Pontefract Business Forum 10 days ago, and it seems like a very logical idea at that point when you talk about energy security. Now, I know there will be comments based on what I've just said, you know, the Conservative councillor from Pontefract, but the observation that I would make is that energy security really is an issue, and that's something that I've already written to government ministers about. Coming back to the situation, then, I know as a council we have expertise at trying to generate jobs and support people, and I'm sure that will be something that people will be diligent about. Whatever other comments people will make, they will make the comments. Denise, in terms of your report, there have been a number of things happening in recent weeks which, certainly on the eastern side of the district, look to be potentially very, very workable and very, very helpful. I know at the moment there are two situations happening in the Glasshampton area which will have to be decided at some point in the future by the planning committee, so I'm not going to dwell on them to a great degree, but the observation that I would make is that both are retail-based, both have significant free parking implications, and can I ask, when you do your parking review of the district, that you consider acknowledging the situation that potentially could happen, which is similar to the situation that happened in Morley with the White Rose Centre, where they had to actually do away with parking charges in the town centre, whether it be Pontefract or Castleford or both, so that people would still use those town centres, because those town centres are at risk if the major retail proposals do get delivered with free parking in place. So that's an item. I know we've got something later about parking permits, and I know that people have talked about how they're affected by parking permits and therefore have declared. This is potentially a permit tax. This is a tax on the people of the district, and there are 9,500 people currently that have parking permits, so it's an important thing for those people. I know we'll talk to that later on. But in your parking review, some of the business rate that's going to come in from these big new developments and these big changes, could you make representations to try to make some of that available to handle some of this issue so that our town centres don't die as a result of these developments? Thank you.
I didn't raise these developments because they are subject to a planning application, and there's a long way to go before any application is agreed or otherwise, and there would probably be an inquiry with the Secretary of State. So we're a long way to go from that. So I haven't raised it in my report. I know it's out for consultation. There's been consultation in Castleford and in Pontefract. And the issue would be, what will it do to Castleford and Pontefract? How will it affect the town centres? And all I can say at the moment is that would be taken into account. We've had various meetings to discuss it, but I think at the moment we'd best leave well alone and see what happens through the planning process.
Councillor Austin, please.
Yes, Denise, it's just to come in. I welcome the recent news that a repair order has been made on the owners of the Crown Court building, which has been allowed to deteriorate to a dreadful condition by various private owners over the past years. It's good news. Thanks, Denise.
Yes, we took a paper to Cabinet on Tuesday about the Crown Court building. The Crown Court building has been never been owned by the council, and it's been owned by various different landlords who have actually abdicated the responsibility for looking after the building. And we felt really that it was the right thing to do to take action to stop this building falling down. It is in the civic quarter of the town. We have got a master plan to bring regeneration to that area, so it's the right and proper thing to do. Is to take control of this building, serve a repairs notice, but take action to take ownership if we have to do, and that's what we shall do.
Councillor Harrison, please.
I would just like to say that I fully compliment the chairman for taking that particular action on that particular building. It's a treasure, it's a jewel in the middle of our heart of our civic centre, and the thing that you're doing to save it is commendable, and I totally support what you're doing.
Thank you. That concludes Councillor Jeffrey's report. Agenda item 9B next is Councillor Mrs Garbutt's report, which can be found on pages 21 to 23. Councillor Garbutt, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm moving my report, but if I could just share with you some really good news that's happened in the district. The Wakefield West GP's practices have been chosen as one of the 10 winners out of 250 that applied for the Prime Minister's Challenge Fund, which means around £2 million that's been allocated. Some of the plans is to extend primary care access over longer hours, develop advice and wellbeing services to support self-care, radically open up access mechanisms using a full range of technology, and extended hours from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m, 7 days a week, offering mutual channels for access. Their plans fully reflect our joint thinking across health and social care, where we're all working to redesign the services for local communities, creating capacity to do things differently. This is only a few of the examples in their plans, but as I say, it is very, very good news for the district. I'll move my report and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. Are there any questions? Councillor Hopkins, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's with regard to the Wakefield West GP Consortium and the award. Can I ask whether you would agree with me that it's thanks to the current Prime Minister David Cameron that all this money has been made available nationally? And would you further agree with me that part of the reason why it was necessary was that the change of GP contracts in the mid-80s meant that a lot of GP services weren't available in the out-of-hours situation. And could we further, not only congratulating Dr. Chris Jones and his team for getting this award, congratulate him also for, had it not been successful, at least he had a plan B that he could have brought into being, which would have created the same situation, because he recognised that the present service, where GPs were not obliged to give service outside their core hours, as it were, just wasn't sustainable.
With regards to this funding coming from the government, it's actually a way round of saying that we're putting cuts into social care and health throughout the district. And this is another example of how we're trying to alleviate some of the problems that we're encountering in the local district. Therefore, with regard to GP practices being open, on a more regular basis, some of the GP practices have already been doing that as well. But this is, as I say, will help for more to be done throughout the district. Thank you.
Councillor Rhodes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask the portfolio holder to further comment on this particular issue. We had a representation to our scrutiny committees on the value of this project going forward for the Prime Minister's Fund. And we were, of course, through the scrutiny committee, very pleased to support this initiative, and I welcome it. What I have concerns about is all the other people across the district and all the other practices who won't have the same advantage, who in fact will be in the service that they are now, queuing up for appointments at their local doctor, wanting to know when a doctor can see them, and indeed the appointment system thereon afterwards as well. Would the Cabinet holder agree with me that what we want to see is not the £20 billion cuts that's taken place in the NHS, but this kind of project funding to be placed in the GP practices across the district so that everybody has fair and equal opportunity to the same principles of this particular group of GPs.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes.
Yes, Betty, I do agree. And as I say, this £2 million will only go so far. It will not, provide the services that we'd like to see out in our district. So, I receive, what you do say to the scrutiny, and I hope you'll work with us, which you do anyway, to bring about some of the changes that we are trying to do. So thank you for that.
Councillor Hopkins, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following on that and the comments made about the sort of lack of progress for the other GP services, could I ask whether you would be willing to write to the Secretary of State for Health and suggest that once the success of these schemes have been proven, would he please make sure that there is the money there to roll it out across the rest of the district? Because I'm sure that is the intention of these schemes, that it won't just stop there, it will be rolled out. Will you join us in doing that?
Yes, I've no problem in doing that, David, and also I'll probably write to him and say to reinstate our cuts that are taking place as well.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt, and that concludes your report. Agenda item 8C, Councillor Mrs Rowley's report, can be found on pages 25 and 26. Councillor Rowley, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move my report formally, and no doubt when we get out of here this afternoon there will be news items, because today is the national decision making for primary school places in the district, and it will, I'm sure, receive wide coverage because there is an awareness across the country of the real shortage in school places. I think we've done very well again in Wakefield, slightly down on last year, in that the total number of applications for primary school places for September 2014 is 3,990, and the total number of applications last year was 3,845. and the percentage of children who get their first choice of primary school place for September 2014 is 90.83, and last year it was 91.6. So more children have got places this year, but the percentage is slightly down. The second choice, so for the first choice of primary schools, 90.83 children have got places. Second choice, 4.24. Third choice, 0.6%. And there's about 70 children who haven't got any of their choices and have been offered places within 2 miles of where they live. And we're trying to resolve that and give as much advice as possible. It's happened for a number of reasons. But I think that actually, given both the financial stress on our schools and also the sheer number of children applying to go to primary schools, we've done very well, and I congratulate the staff. Thank you, and I move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. Are there any comments? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Olivia, is there any, perhaps you could look into this for me, is there any truth in the situation that schools like Aigton Pastures, that are under great pressure for school places, might have had an opportunity to perhaps have some sort of extension if some of the local estates around there had actually been, the formula had been applied to actually provide additional school places? Because I'm hearing that a number of the estates that have sprung up around there, which presumably are starting to put some of the pressure on, actually were passed without the formula being applied. Could you look at that for me, please? Thank you.
Certainly, I'm not aware of it. The formula is applied every time any building work takes place in Wakefield. The situation often is that some areas, because of the very nature of the housing, produce children of a certain age and others don't. But we try to be as careful as possible, and I'm very aware that officers look into each planning application very carefully. But I'll come back to you on it.
Thank you. It's the sort of Whitwood area that the new developments around the Whitwood area around the cemetery.
Well, since there are no more comments, that concludes your report, Councillor Rowley. Agenda item 9D is the next report from Councillor Stokes, which can be found on pages 27 to 30. Would Councillor Stokes, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to formally move my report and take questions, but I will mention one thing on the last item on my report, which refers to the Council's 40th anniversary. I just thought that's worthy of mention, since the 40th anniversary of this Council took place on the 1st of April. That was the date when Wakefield Council first came into being. And I know I've been around for 31 of them, which shows the age a bit. And there's actually people in this chamber that have been here longer than that. And we've actually got 19 staff that have been here since day one. So I'd like to congratulate all those, along with the 37 staff who will also achieve 40 years service during this year. So we do have a 40-year card prepared for them, which will be issued to the staff, and they'll be invited to the Directorate Award Ceremonies as part of the Pride Award scheme that will happen in May this year. So congratulations to us all.
Are there any questions or comments, please? No, that there are no comments or questions, so we move on to the next agenda item, which is 9E, Councillor Dagger's report, which can be found on pages 31 to 33. Councillor Dagger, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to add to my report, so I'll formally move my report and take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Dagger, please? Yes. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Dagger, when you said nothing to add to my report, I have to say I'm a little bit surprised, because there are two important things that have happened that I would have hoped you would have reported to Council today. The first one is the closure of Sun Lane swimming pool. Now, I'm certainly not going to hold you responsible for the faults that have been discovered, but closing it should have been mentioned. It is a significant event. The fact that it's being closed during the school holidays, I think, is another unfortunate situation, because wouldn't you agree with me that when the children are at school, if they can't go to the swimming baths, at least they can have other lessons? When they're on holiday, going to the swimming baths is one of the things that a lot of children get quite a bit of enjoyment out of. So in some respects, we're depriving our local children of their, Easter enjoyment. And the other thing that you haven't mentioned is the market. Can I ask, would you be prepared to make sure that there is an appropriate in-depth report that comes to this council that tells us why it is that a market that was heralded as it were, the new age of markets, which has failed so miserably, has had to run the risk of being closed, demolished and turned into a cinema of all things? And would you also be prepared to have full discussions with the present users of the market so that we can have, and return to a proper market instead of what was promised to us as an upmarket that has proved to be useless?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, on Sun Lane, really there's never a good time to close a pool. And the problem was that there'd been some water seepage through one of the walking areas in the pool. Now, the contractors had tried to carry out a temporary repair or try and repair it without having to drain the pool. But unfortunately, this couldn't be done. The other thing was as well the time period, out of the validity of the warranty period. So we had to get this done sooner than later. So I know there is some disruption to the citizens of Wakefield for using Sun Lane Leisure, and I do apologise for that. However, there is never a good time. And as regards disruption, we may disrupt some people using the pool over the Easter period, but what we've tried to avoid is no disruption to the school swimming programme for the schools that use the pool. So that's why I've had to close it sooner than later. And as regards Wakefield Market, there is no decision yet on Wakefield Market whatsoever. And can I say that Councillor Box and I met with the market traders a couple of weeks ago, and we had various discussions with them. And one of the things they are looking to do is to take on the markets themselves as a trader cooperative. And we're awaiting their response on that. And that response, hopefully, we will get by the end of April.
Thank you, Councillor Dagger. Councillor Walsh, please.
David, it's a comment, and it's a welcome comment, actually. I think it's very appropriate that you're taking seriously the fact that school children need to learn to swim. And hopefully we're not going to find that swimming provision is reduced to the degree that we're having to ship people out of the district to actually get some of the swimming that they're going to. So I welcome the emphasis that you put on the fact that school children do need to learn to swim, and we do need to have the facilities available to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Howland.
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Dagger on the swiftness he did move with Sun Lane and not put any children's health at risk or have any problems whatsoever with children. So really he's to be congratulated, and the health and safety team, for acting so quickly. And irrespective of what Councillor Hopkins said, would he rather the children go when it's in a dangerous situation?
Thank you. And that seems to be the end of the questions and comments. So thank you, Councillor Dagger. And we'll move to agenda item 9F, which is the report of Councillor Mrs Cummins, and can be found on pages 35 to 41. Councillor Cummins, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Only a couple of things I want to add to this. First of all, the Facebook campaign to actually reunite stray dogs with their owners seems to be proving quite a success. Since the launch, we've had 74 lost dogs reported and 77 strays collected, and they've been reunited with their owners. And I just want to thank Anthony Sadler, who is with us today, for his stalwart efforts in running the marathon in 3 hours and 15 minutes. And to date raising over £1,000 for the Mayor's charity. The sad thing is he's using the lift now and not the steps because his legs aren't working. But I do hope that everybody in the chamber who hasn't supported Anthony in his efforts to raise money for the Heart Foundation actually supports him today. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that, I move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Cummins. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maureen, back in December I asked a question about waste. I asked a question about litter and about what the costs of collection were and costs of disposal. I'm still waiting on an answer, and the observation I would make is that the last real figure that I've been able to see was an estimate of about £3 million for collecting litter. I'm told that the council find it difficult to actually break down the costs of litter and the costs of dog fouling, etc. And I wonder how we know which bits to bear down on if we don't know which bits are costing us the stuff that it's doing. So, could you get somebody to have another look at that, please, for me? And the other thing is, could you... I think when I last asked the question in November and I asked about dog fouling notices, you said that there were 4, but it was kind of difficult because people are wearing yellow jackets. I think it's still true, and I can still see that we've issued 4 dog fouling notices. So, is it the fact that should we use some other sort of method for trying to identify those people that perhaps are being antisocial with their dogs? Thank you.
Sorry that you're not satisfied with the responses that you've received on the question you asked in December. I was led to believe that communication has been made with you, so I will chase that up. With regard to dog fouling, you're quite right. We want to educate people not to do it rather than fine them for actually doing it. We've only got 2 dog wardens that are highly visible. They do go out sometimes using information without the jackets on. The police can't take their jackets off. The PCSOs can't take the jackets off. So obviously when they're seen, then fouling is picked up. I mean, it is about education, Jeff, and we will continue to try and educate the district that it's not right that you should let your animal foul on the footways and on the grass. You should pick it up, you should put it in the bins provided, or you should take it home.
Sir Johnson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate under External Funding Awards the Outwood Bowling Club have received just over £41,000 from Sport England, which then opens that facility up for improvements, and also the work they've been doing with younger children to give taster lessons for Crown and Green bowling, which is good for all the youngsters in the ward. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Tish.
Councillor Tish. I haven't been called that since Frank Ward was in chair. If I could be of some help to Jeff, I don't know what his memory's like, it appears to be failing a little bit, but I can remember a campaign, 12, 18 months ago, where it was plastered on side of every dustbin lorry and every refuse collection vehicle in the district, and it said, more of this means less of this. And there were some nice flowers and a load of rubbish. And it said at the bottom quite clearly that it costs us, this authority, £4 million a year to pick it up. So stop it. So there you are, that's your information for that one. And regarding dog wardens, I think those two dog wardens, I thought there were more to be honest, Molly, but I think those two dog wardens are absolutely superb people, because not only are they looking after dogs, they're now looking after another nuisance which seems to be inherent all over the district, is these travellers' horses that seem to be roaming all over the place. Wherever you look, you seem to see a couple of horses tied up, or one walking down Main Street or in children's playground. And those two people are actually responsible for looking after that as well. So I say fair play to them, and more power to their elbow. Actually, I think it's as a part-time dog owner, I look after my son's dog, and you can actually see them, going around. You can see them. Is anybody looking? And they'll let them mess. And if you shout at them, these people, I never saw it. So I think we should all be policing that situation and not just relying on two people across the district. We should be telling them. I see them, they don't.
What can I say to that? What can I say to that? Thank you. I thought you were going to mention Featherstone, but never mind. But yeah, I mean, we've had several campaigns. I mean, the YouTube campaign, which has attracted today over 10,000 hits, does actually say that you can report it. I mean, it's just not about the dog wardens, and it's not about fixed penalty notices. It's about anybody that sees it actually reporting it as well. And if that continues to happen, then maybe we could get on top of this. But it is a problem. And thank you for that assistance, Graham.
Thank you, Councillor Cummins. And we now move to agenda item 9G. The final report is from Councillor Shaw and can be found on pages 43 to 44.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just like to formally move my report, and I'll answer any questions on it.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Yes, Councillor Elaine Blizzard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, can I ask that you could keep local members informed on the Normanton depot before you make any decisions or anything?
Yeah, we'll do more than that, Elaine. We'll not only keep you informed, but we'll involve you as time moves on. Okay?
Councillor Walsh, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Les, can you give us an update on the Town Hall? How's it going against budget and time? Is it still 2 million?
I thought you'd remember, Jeff, it was in the report last month where we said it was on time and it was on specification. And at this moment it still is. And we'll keep giving updates as we go on, okay? I'm really pleased that you're happy that it's on time and that it's to spec.
Since there doesn't appear to be any more questions, we'll move to... Thank you, Councillor Shaw, and we'll move to agenda item 10. This is the report to reconfirm the Council's support for a joint health overview and scrutiny committee in relation to the new congenital heart disease review. And the report can be found on pages 45 to 50. Is the report moved?
Can I move the report, Madam Mayor, and the recommendation that we appoint Councillor Mrs Rhodes onto the scrutiny committee?
Is this report seconded, please?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions in relation to this report? No. Are there any comments in relation to this report? Yes, Councillor Hopkins, please.
Just very briefly to say, Madam Mayor, that I'm quite sure that Councillor Rhodes will have the full support of all members of this House when she sits on this joint committee, because as a member of the local health and social care and scrutiny committee, I've always found her, very positive and supportive in the way she deals with the issues before her. So you have our support, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Any further comments? No. Right, all in favour of the report? Any against? That is carried. Agenda item 11 is to deal with any questions made by members due notice having been given. No questions have been received. The final agenda item 12 is to deal with any motions proposed by members. There are 4 motions. In accordance with Council's procedure rules, Councillor Stokes gave the required notice to submit the motion which is set out on page 2 of the Council summons. Councillor Stokes, would you please move your motion to Council?
Can I just ask on a point of order or a point of clarification before we move to the debate? Can I raise something with you on a point of order or a point of clarification before we start the debate on the resolutions that's on the order paper?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just need to be mindful of what's been said earlier, and also to the fact that following the cabinet, the full council meeting before last, I made comments in my contribution about benefits and welfare reform, and then was sent a letter from the legal officer about my comments were gratuitous and not in keeping with the flow of the debate. I took exception to that, but we are where we are. I just need some guidance, clarification. If anybody wants to make comments and are quite entitled to politically attack the opposition in this next stage of proceedings, can we be mindful that you can determine whether or not people's comments are gratuitous or not, as the case may be? Thank you.
Yeah, that letter you're referring to included personal information and exempt information, and it was not allowed to be put into any reports. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Councillor Stokes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My motion is about welfare changes. We've had a mayor before. The welfare changes implemented by this government are nothing short of a national disgrace. They've attacked most benefit areas, from the abolition of council tax support, bedroom tax, replacement of DLA, where they cut it by 20%, then replaced it with personal independence payments. All these must be a record that the government's very proud of. And another shambles for Ian Duncan Smith, because absolutely nothing he's done actually works. The administration of personal independence payments is in such a state with huge backlogs that even Atos has now walked away from it. 43% of appeals against the Atos test for employment support allowance are upheld, so you just wonder how could they get it so wrong. 220,000 people have put in personal independence payment claims nationally, and less than a fifth of them have been processed. Universal credit is a fiasco. It's years late. The Public Accounts Committee have said that the work incentives contained within it aren't there. With council tax to pay, housing benefit cuts, national insurance, many working people who eventually get onto universal credit will find they'll lose almost every penny out of every extra pound that they earn. And on the Today programme, Ian Duncan Smith was asked if the government will meet the child poverty targets, and he said, "I believe we will." But since then, since they've been in power, child poverty has got worse, and it continues to do so. And the Institute of Fiscal Studies have predicted that there will be 300,000 more children in poverty by next year, and it will be up to nearly 1 million by 2020. The government's failure to provide a safety net for the poor has culminated in the need for food banks. The reduction of welfare entitlements, payment delays, sanctioning of people on benefits have left some people without any income at all. And what did Lord Freud have to say about that? He said last year, the reason why more people are going to food banks is because the food is free. How condescending can that be? The food bank in Nottingham is now 6 months old. They've fed 292 people, 206 adults and 86 children. And I think what a sorry indictment that is of this government. That is a government for the rich that attacks the poor. They have to do this for austerity, they say, but they can still give tax discounts to the rich. At least Wakefield Council is doing what it can, along with its partners, to mitigate the impact of welfare cuts that are being made. not based on need, but based on finance. In a society where we're told that the economic situation is improving, why do we still need to punish the poor? 20,000 people in our district have been affected by the changes to the benefit rules, including the bedroom tax, the abolition of council tax benefit, the abolition of community care grants and crisis loans, the introduction of a benefit cap, the introduction of personal independence payments, all a concerted and continuing attack on those that have got the least. And Wakefield District Housing now tell us that 47% of their tenants affected by bedroom tax are now in a worsening financial position. Our accommodation team is actually working with landlords and registered housing providers to increase the availability of houses for those threatened with homelessness. We're combining our local welfare provision with discretionary housing payments so that we can continue to help the destitute when local welfare provision is axed by this government. We've launched the Wakefield Apprenticeship Hub to encourage local employers to take young people not in education, employment or training on as apprentices. And it's incredulous that we have to have this discussion on how we can continue to help people in Wakefield who've got very little and in some cases nothing. But we at our side of the chamber at least support the council's efforts. We've introduced Wakefield Works, which provides information for young people on apprenticeships, training schemes and self-employment opportunities. We've established enterprise clubs which provide a place where people who are thinking of starting their own business can meet and share ideas while receiving expert advice and support. And we've done all this while the Conservatives opposite have had nothing to say to support those affected by benefit cuts. Up to now they've sat there stony-faced on every occasion that welfare reform has been raised in this chamber. So I'm actually pleased that today they've submitted an amendment. It means that they might finally have something to say about benefit cuts. They might even be prepared to discuss it. They've never once asked their government to give us some support.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Okay. Even when the government, perhaps stung by the damage they've done, gave us an additional £250,000 of discretionary housing payment, those opposite never asked for it. They were happy to see the cuts being made. So I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. Is the motion seconded?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Garbutt, in seconding the motion, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? But may I remind you that if you do so and you reserve your right to speak, a closure motion is agreed in the debate, you will then lose your right to speak.
I'll speak now, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I believe that Graham said most of what this government's done. A year on, 20,000 working age citizens in the Wakefield district have been affected. There are increased numbers of cases being presented to services where citizens have a number of complex issues, including multiple debts, worklessness, poor housing and low income. Over the course of this year, the number of people in temporary accommodation has shown an increase. Food banks in the district are reporting problems with capacity and resources and are experiencing difficulties in managing the volumes of callers. It's alarming that this government will not be allocating funding for local welfare provision beyond 2014-15. This will mean that citizens will have to supplement their living costs via credit cards and other lending mechanisms, adding more hardship to families. So therefore, I fully support and second this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 13.6, an amendment to the motion has been submitted, and the amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Walsh, would you please introduce your amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. In putting the amendment forward, we're responding to what Councillor Stokes has talked about through the last year, the last 2 years. You've got plenty to say about the things that you're not happy about. Absolutely right. You accept no responsibility for your part in the shipwreck, but you've got plenty of opinion that you wish to put forward. And in proposing our amendment to the motion, we're trying to give you something that might help give a little bit of balance. So from that perspective, when one considers that the benefits budget and welfare budgets were running out of control and have been running out of control, one of the major stages in trying to get the economy back under control was actually about trying to balance or cap benefits. Interestingly, your party have supported the most recent benefit capping motions through Parliament. So it would appear that you're at odds with your party on this one. But that's fine, by the way. I mean, that's perfectly okay. The Wakefield Way, which you've been working on for the last 40 years, you've got a process and you've got an approach. But we have a situation where there's a massive budget deficit. If you look at the housing benefit increases, with a £20 billion increase over time, it equates to 4 million civil servants, 4.3 million public servants that would actually pay for those people. But the reality is that what you're doing is you're piling up a debt, or you've been piling up a debt that really is one that has put this country into a situation where we've not been able to be resilient in the tough times that we've faced. And you don't acknowledge it, and you don't accept it, and you talk about the problems that come from it. And you guess it that we don't agree with you about that. You let welfare spending get out of control. And there was no accountability for the increases that gave us the largest budget deficit in British history, peacetime history. You talk about food banks, and food banks and Christian charity, people helping other people, has been part of the last 100 years of the history of this country. I'm not trying to belittle the work that people are doing now, but people have been working with people in difficult times and difficult need over the years. So it's not new, and it isn't new. You look at the money that's been made available in terms of local welfare provision fund, and at this point, of the 943,000 that was made available to you, you've used about 200,000 of it. Now you're telling us that people are having a really difficult time. If the money's available, why aren't you using it? Now you're saying, okay, well, there's not really any money in future. This is the same argument that was put in 2009 that was saying, well, we're going to do away with, Conservatives are going to do away with heating allowances. The Conservatives are going to do away with television licences for the elderly. The Conservatives are going to do away with... And you were building a picture which just was wrong. Just hasn't come true. So, can't agree with the broad brush of what you've said, but if you're prepared to vote with us on our amendment, we've got some aspects of common ground.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. With that, is the amendment seconded, please? And may I again remind Council that in seconding the amendment, the member may reserve their right to speak later in the debate.
Madam Mayor, I second the amendment and I will speak now if I may. In 2008-2009, this country faced almost a meltdown in its finances, as did a lot of the world. And in some respects, even the Labour government of the time was recognising this, but they recognised it in a situation where, during the previous 4 or 5 years, when economies were booming quite a bit, unemployment in this country had gone up by about 40%. So, you know, we weren't exactly in the position to be starting from a very sound footing in terms of tackling the deficit. So, yes, things have been very hard for people. There's no getting away from that. And nobody is trying to pretend from the government side that things have been resolved or things are going to go away easily. The whole situation has got to have a complete rethink. And you could say that having a complete rethink is where sometimes two heads are better than one. Well, in some respects, we've got two heads who are better than one, because both Ed Miliband and Ed Balls have agreed with the government that the overall welfare budget has got to be limited. Now, there's always going to be a bit of disagreement between things as to how you limit different parts of that budget. And the last point that's in the